to another macro multiple choice year 12 practice. Let's walk through this together. This is an old style AQA paper, but don't worry, I personally feel it's really good to train yourself on these for all exam boards. It'll test your definitions, your models. Let's get started. An increase in imports of consumer goods. Imports, consumers need to be wealthier to be able to afford imports. I'm looking for something like that. And if they're saving more, they could have more wealth in the future, but not right now. Whereas a rise in household income, that definitely is going to increase consumer inputs. They'll have more money to pay for it, so they can buy more. Real incomes. Okay, the equation for real incomes, I'll write it down. It's really important to always take your income that's not had inflation, so nominal inflation, and then you divide it by what's happening to your CPI index. And then just divide that by 100. So that's real incomes increases if you have more nominal income, whereas if you have less, lower CPI. Or like a combination of both. You have nominal incomes increasing, CPI could increase, but I guess if it increases slower than the nominal income, the numerator is going to rise like a lot more than the denominator, so therefore real incomes will rise. Current account deficit, this is dealing with exports and imports, specifically the value of exports and the value of imports. Like that was that was nice. Sometimes people confuse that with government spending. That's not the same thing. Fiscal policy, we're looking at taxes, government spending, and okay, a budget surplus is to do with government spending and taxes. It's unlikely for the UK. Budget surplus means taxes is greater than government spending, but if the government is choosing that, they're changing taxes and government spending, so that's a fiscal policy. Question 5, the economy is growing at 2.5%. That's the long-term growth. So just to remind you, that's your long-run average, that 2.5 thing. And it's saying that right now inflation is 4% and GDP is increasing by 5. Okay. So that means real GDP, which is your GDP over your inflation is doing. Your inflation is increasing by 4 and GDP increasing by a little bit more, 5. So overall real GDP should increase, but not by very much because inflation's been very high. So I reckon the real GDP rate will be lower than its long-term trend. Long-term trend, as you know, is always defined as real GDP. So I reckon the economy will be growing below its trend rate. And so the economy is lower than its trend rate of growth, so it's currently like on here somewhere. And as a result, kind of an underperformance relative to its potential. It could be a recovery, it could be a recession, but overall it's not going to be fully employing all the resources, so there is growing unemployment as the economy is operating weaker. The inflation rate is falling. I love these questions. These questions, they come up a lot. If inflation is falling, it's still, remember inflation means prices are increasing. So prices are still increasing if there is inflation, they're just increasing slower. So average prices are just not lower. They always say there's fall sharply, they don't fall, otherwise that would be negative inflation, and they increased every year. Yeah, that's the answer. When an increase in exports leads to a larger increase in national income. Okay, this sounds just like a multiplier, right? Because multiplier is about injections leading to more increase in national output. There we go. Aggregate demand in the short run and long run supply. Economy, it has an output level right now that's lower than its full employment. So it's right now below its potential. So I don't think it has much of an inflation problem. Going to ignore those. There will be unemployment, yeah. because it's not at its full employment, therefore there is unemployment. A decrease in aggregate demand is most likely to result in a reduction. Okay, if AD falls from AD1 to AD2, there will be a decrease in output as well as prices. So I'm looking for something like this, P1, P2, or Y1, Y2. There should be more spending on welfare benefits because your economy is smaller, it's shrunk, people need income support. More unemployment, not less. There's a reduction, no, there'll be more government spending, right? Because the economy isn't doing very good. Amount of payments, yeah, okay, strange, but if there's less AD, there's less income, including household income, so then they can buy fewer imports. With fewer imports, X minus M falls, and that's what that means. The balance of payments deficit on the current accounts will get smaller. Economy is operating at full employment, which is most likely to lead to an increase in real national output without an increase in the rate of inflation in the short term. That was a very long sentence. So it's operating at full employment. Okay. So it's right now Y1. And we want to not increase in inflation. So it's not going to be AD. So let me just get rid of that. Exports increases AD. Reduction in AD. Government expenditure AD. Manufacturing productivity, yeah, that's going to shift your AS. So you'll end up getting more output given an AD curve, and you won't get the inflation. Fall in investment, I'm looking for a smaller economy, higher interest rate, something like this. There's less unemployment. That should be good. People have more incomes, they should buy more, and so therefore you'll want to invest more. An increase in the spare capacity. Yes. So the economy right now is at full employment here, and let's say right now it's at Y1. This kind of represents a spare capacity, all that kind of unemployment of resources that's ready to go. So if there's an increase in spare capacity, you've gone to like Y2, so there's more unutilized resources, and because of that your output's lower, and maybe we could say that as a result businesses won't want to invest. They don't see that much potential in the economy anymore. Inflation is 10% and you want to decrease inflation. Right, so to decrease demand pull inflation we want lower AD, but we're also flexible. More AS would also bring down price levels. So with interest rates, to bring down AD, we want higher interest rates, right? Because higher interest rates is going to decrease consumption and encourage people to save. That's going to decrease consumption, increase savings, so that's good. Government expenditure, we want to decrease AD. So less government expenditure. It looks like C is the answer. Yeah, more tax, that will decrease AD. Rise in the exchange rate. Okay. The pound exchange rate increases, does two things. The price of exports are impacted and the price of imports are impacted. Exports get more expensive and imports get cheaper. So we predict that we will import a higher quantity and export less. So X minus M should fall. So anything that wants to reduce AD is pushed to easier. It pushes AD even further. So if you want to reduce inflation, one of the ways you want to do this is by decreasing your AD from AD1 to AD2. And if the pound is depreciating, it will just cause another shift in AD. So that's a really good win to decrease inflation. Consumer prices index rises from 100 to 105. Okay, consumer prices index is how we measure inflation. So there's been 5% inflation. If you do the percentage change equation, you'll see that. Inflation rate has increased by 5%. kind of confused with the phrasing inflation rate. I'm not sure about that one. Is it inflation? Maybe inflation rate. Average price level is increased by 5%. That's exactly what the CPI does. The CPI tracks what's happening to average prices over time, and they've increased by 5%. We just worked that out. Two aggregate demand curves and long run. Aggregate demand will increase in the long run from AD1 to AD2. We want to get to E and not F. Okay, so then the curve missing, we want the long run AS to shift to here. So all I'm looking for is a policy that would shift the long run AS to the right. What shifts the long run AS to the right is more factors of production are actually available in the country, or a higher quality of them. So if there's increased mobility of labor, there's more people that are available to work that previously weren't able to work anymore. That's the answer. An accelerated process. Okay, so if the economy grows, there's more sales. There's more sales, companies need to buy more capital. And that's what the increased investment is. And then buying more capital will just shift your AS and cause further growth and further AD and stuff. So I'm looking for some kind of growth in the economy for this accelerator effect to kind of be triggered. So growth is going to happen if consumption's high, right? Because if consumption is high, there's more AD. So it'd be good if these things are rising. This one's difficult, right? If there's too much spare capacity, it could reflect there being a recession. And maybe that's bad, because if there's a recession, then there's not that increased sales. But then again, if there's too much spare capacity, possibly the accelerated process doesn't have much more that could actually happen. I'm going to skip that one. Supply of investment funds. Okay, we need that one to be higher, right? So then, therefore, it looks like C is going to be the answer. So spare productive capacity apparently is low here. Okay, if you're close to the full employment potential in your economy, so if you're at kind of the full employment level of income, I suppose if you're close, I shouldn't have drawn it on it. If you're close to any kind of full employment, the only way to provide for the increased sales is to invest more. I don't know, that one was tough. 600,000 workers arrived in the UK from the EU. Inflation remained low, unemployment. Right, I think this is talking about lots of migration coming into the country, which would have shifted AS, and as a result that would have decreased prices from P1 to P2, which is what inflation remains low, and it would create economic growth, right? It would increase Y1 to Y2. So I reckon that's the answer. That's what we've just been talking about. The underlying trend rate of growth is declining. So let's say this was the average path the economy was on before, and for some reason the economy is now like on a new long-term trend. Let's say it's doing something like that. So I guess what we want to do is increase that back up again. So we're looking for something that affects the long term. Something that affects the long term is going to be AS related. So expansionary fiscal policy, that would reduce unemployment. Okay, let's go with that. You don't want anything restrictive. You need growth, 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 growth. Restrictive, nah. This is the answer. You don't want anything restrictive. You want to increase your long-term growth, but at the same time deal with unemployment. You're just saying growth at all costs. Supply side policy, something that affects your long-run AS. Something that has you having more factors of production that weren't available before, and maybe a higher quality of them. Okay, the answer is D. Why? If taxes fall, there is possibly an increased incentive. Companies are more incentivized to invest, to train people, because they can make more profits and they can keep more profits. So overall, the quality of labor and the quality of capital should increase. So balance of payments deficit and inflation. So I reckon that's what it means. X minus M is smaller than 0 and there's inflation. So AD is too high or AS is too low. We want to reduce both. So I reckon we want to sell more exports, decrease the price of the exports. AS could be a good shout and that would help to reduce the inflation. So I'm looking for something AS related ideally. Oh, okay, didn't get it, but this works, I think. A reduction in the exchange rate is going to reduce the price of exports, so you should sell more. So that should help correct the balance of payments deficit. Will it help with inflation? Maybe not. This is going to help with the balance of payments. It should increase AD. So that would actually worsen inflation. Cut in interest rates will increase AD. Similar things to that other one. Less AD here. Oh, okay, this is the answer. Right, so both C and B sound tempting, right? Because both of them will increase the performance of the economy. D, the lower exchange rate, is going to increase exports, and that's one of the goals that we have here. We want to definitely increase exports. That seems good, but it's going to have a bad effect on inflation. So this one is bad on inflation. That one is bad on inflation. And C is actually bad on inflation. If you have decreased income tax, people are spending more money. So it turns out A is I think the answer, the kind of the controversial answer, because it's not what you would expect. But when government spending falls, you will get this really interesting thing where people have lower incomes, right? Because they're receiving less pensions, less welfare benefits, and as a result, they can spend less money, including on imports. So M is going to fall, and that's going to help reduce the balance of payments deficit. And then at the same time, it's going to reduce inflation because that's reduced AD. Yes, I'm just double checking myself. Diagram shows how real national output and the price level are affected by a change in aggregate demand. We've got AD increasing. So what could have increased AD? We're looking for something that increases C or I or G or X or decreases M. Increasing the budget deficit, that's the one. If you do this, you are increasing G and you're decreasing T. If you decrease taxes, you're increasing consumption and you're increasing investment. All those together will increase AD. The pound falls, you are going to have cheaper exports, more expensive imports. X should increase, M should decrease. By the way, there's more to that, but that's something that you learn in year 13. Right, so I'm predicting that X minus M is going to increase for the UK, and that increases AD, yeah. So I think that one's the answer. Cut in the central bank's lending rate. This is another word for interest rate. Interest rates are falling. This is a type of monetary policy. It's done by the central bank. All monetary policy is done by the central bank, at least in the UK. Economy has experienced inflation. Prices have increased. Okay, that's because your short run AS has shifted left. That's because of increased costs of production, average cost of production. I'm looking for something related to that. There we go. Wages increasing. It doesn't matter that productivity is increasing because wages are increasing by more. On average, your cost will increase, and so that short run AS will shift left. Increased innovation in an economy is likely to lead to a shift of that long runner, yes, to the right. So you get lower prices, higher output. Yeah, that's the one. They were nice with that one. I hope that video was really fun and interesting to you, and you got lots to learn from it. And yeah, leave any comments if you have any other ideas, anything that would be useful. Else, I've got a list of other multiple choice practice questions that you can do below. Okay, thank you so much for spending your time on this, and have a good day. Bye.